Let's be real. Learning to mix on YouTube, it's a trap. You start out looking for one answer and suddenly you're drowning in a sea of contradictory advice from people who've never even had a track played on a proper sound system. One video says, high pass everything at 150 hertz. The next one swears you should never touch anything below 100. One guy says parallel compression is essential, and another guy says it's amateur hour. And you're left thinking, okay, who's actually right? Meanwhile, your mixes still sound boxy, flat, hollow, lifeless, lacking punch, power, and weight. And it's not because you're not talented. It's because YouTube's job is to keep you watching, not to actually teach you how to mix. You're listening to episode 39 of Producer Talk with Bass Kleph, and if you're wondering why should you be listening to me, well, I've toured 33 countries, had multiple number ones on Beatport, signed hundreds of records to the world's top labels like Armada, Spinnin', Toolroom, Defected, as Bass Kleph and Analog Soul, and since 2016 I've been helping producers like you finish great songs fast and get a pro sound. Yes, indeed. So let's talk about this. I want to break this down into a couple of different sort of chapters or sections today. And the main one, the first one I want to kick it off with is why YouTube keeps you stuck when you're trying to learn your mix down. And there's a few kind of sub reasons within that. And probably the first one let's touch on would be the algorithm trap. And what I mean by that is, you see, YouTube pushes stuff to you. They push clickbait mixing tips to you that are not structured education. This is designed to keep you watching, not progressing. So it's just kind of guessing what it thinks you want to watch based on your search history. And that's not to be confused with what you need to see at this given moment in your mixing or production journey that is going to help you the best. Two very different things. You might be in the early stages where you really need to know the overall picture of how you should be approaching your mix down, what the fundamental tools are and how to use them correctly. But the YouTube algorithm might be recommending you advanced mid-side multiband compression and telling you why it's essential, or showing you multiple different types of vintage compressors and asking you to hear the difference and say that that's the magic bullet. Or very often they're recommending plugins you should be using or something which you very rarely even need. All of this results in you getting tips that are coming at you at the wrong order, at the wrong time. They're not customized to where you're at in your current journey, and they have no idea where you're at. They don't know what you need. The YouTube algorithm is just hoping you're going to watch it, you know? And that's immediately a huge difference between having like a structured system. Now, this all gets compounded too when you take into account that as we're learning, we don't know what we don't know. So you might start searching for one thing that you think is the answer, and then YouTube will just start recommending you more of that. And it's just pulling you down this rabbit hole of the wrong direction over and over again. So it's no wonder people are sitting there going, I started watching this one thing, then I watched 10 more videos, and I feel even more confused than before I started. And many people say too that they've been learning stuff on YouTube for years. I've met students that come to our school and they might have been producing for 10 years and they still haven't got the results they want yet, not until they come to us. But they've been learning on YouTube and it's just surprised thinking, well, I've watched so many lessons. How come I haven't learned anything? This is one of the big reasons why. But it's not just that. It's also all of the contradiction as well too. It's a bit of a contradiction crisis, we could even call it, because there's so much conflicting advice from different creators, and that's going to lead to paralysis and doubt, not progress. Because you see, every creator, every mix engineer and producer has their own style. They have their own way of doing things, and they're going to give you their point of view, their tips. And even if we just imagine for a second, if we hypothetically say that they're all correct and all of their tips work, they don't. They don't all work. Some of them maybe, not all of them. But imagine they did. Even if they all worked and they're all great, if you're getting them from all different people in a random order like this, I highly doubt that would work, because it's just going to mix things together. A lot of things would cancel each other out with different techniques and approaches. Mixing is not about just sticking together a bunch of tips. You need a way to fuse them together, a way that makes them make sense. A system, really, at the very least, an order of what to do when and what cancels out what. Otherwise, it's kind of like you're trying to cook something and you just throw every single ingredient you have in the fridge into the pot and go, yeah, I put everything in, so it must be better, right? It's going to taste amazing because I put everything. More is not better. You just want the right things in the right order. And like I'm saying, it's super unlikely that everybody is correct on YouTube. And I know for a fact because I watch a lot of YouTube as well too. And I see tips pop up all the time and I'll watch them even though I'm a trained and professional mix engineer and music producer and I've been doing this for like 25 years or more. I'm still curious, always open-minded. What can I learn? And I'll watch some tips and occasionally I'll go, oh, that's interesting. But so often I'm just face palming, going, oh my God, this is going to confuse so many people. And the sheer fact that so many bits of advice are just contradictory. People are saying different things. I can pull it apart because I'm experienced. I've done this for a long time, but imagine if I was just starting out or even midway through my journey, it would be so confusing trying to understand which advice is correct and when to use what. It would be almost impossible to know. And then there's this, the credibility problem. You see, you do get people on YouTube that have super high view counts and subscriber accounts, so the amount of followers and everything, right? They're YouTube famous, but that doesn't actually always equal real world results. Many so-called gurus haven't mixed a track that's ever even been played out, let alone been signed to a major label or played on a huge sound system or been on tour around the world. They don't have that real world experience of what is necessary and what's going to move the needle. What they do have experience on is making YouTube videos. They're great at that. They're great at making them entertaining and fun to watch. Sure. I'm sure I could probably learn some things from them because my YouTube videos are a little bit I just get on here and just share my info. But that's all I care about, really. So their videos will keep you entertained. It might be interesting. It might give you an interesting thing to try out, but it's not necessarily taking you further down that path of becoming a better mix engineer, becoming a better music producer, finishing songs faster, and finally achieving that pro sound that you want. The one that's going to make you actually feel proud and stoked and be like, yes, this song is done. I'm going to release it. I'm excited about it. I'm proud of it. I can't wait for it to come out. And I'm super excited to start the next one. And I have the energy to start the next one because I didn't overcomplicate the process. Don't get me started on overcomplicating. I think we talked about this on some other podcasts too, but there's definitely too much celebration of complexity on YouTube tips that I see. If something seems too hard in a YouTube tip, it probably is. There's probably an easier way to do it. Come and ask me and I'll tell you how. So, I mean, I've got examples of students that come to me in this exact situation, kind of like what we were talking about before too, where they come to me for their first, say, mentor lesson or when they're first starting out in Pro Sound Secrets, our mixdown course, and they know a whole bunch of tips. I know because they talk about them and they say, isn't that how you meant to do this? Or I learned this from so-and-so or whatever. And they know like 50, 100 different so-called techniques, but they're still unhappy with their mix. They're still unhappy with how it sounds. Some of them still unhappy with their music too. So I see this evidence over and over again that these tips don't work, mostly because these tips are just wrong. The ones that it's in an echo chamber where people are just repeating them and they're saying the same advice that is actually not good advice that you shouldn't be listening to. But sometimes it's more hidden. It seems like good advice. It sounds sensible, but there's something up with it. Like there's a reason why it's not applicable to you. And we're going to dig into that more as I go on here. Some other reasons why some of the advice out there that could be right for someone is not always right for you. Let's get into that. Let's call this chapter 2, and we're going to talk about why the advice doesn't translate. And one of the biggest reasons I see so often is that the genre is just off. Like you could say the genre is blind in the teaching. This is when you get like generic mixing advice, and it often fails for electronic music because, I mean, electronic music is not rock and roll. It's not funk, although it may sometimes contain some elements. And even within the genres, house is not dubstep, is not techno, is not drum and bass. Each one needs a different approach in the mixdown and in the production as well too. Sure, they're like a similar language, but there's a dialect difference. Like I wouldn't mix the low end the same way on a drum and bass track as I would on a house or techno track. No way. Yet people are out there saying things like, you should always do this on every song. And on so many house and deep house and sort of more classic style genres, I wouldn't be layering my bass line. You can totally do that with just a regular single bass line. Whereas say some dubstep tracks, I might have a sub layer and I might have some sort of atonal upper layer, occasionally in drum and bass too. But you need to know the genre where this applies. Otherwise, the advice is not going to work for you because this advice is genre specific. A big one too is I think the obsession everybody has with parallel compression or the New York drum trick. This has been talked about for ages. This is so old, but people still talk about it like it's something brand new. But it was something that was done on some records back in the day. I mean, some people still use it, where you're just using parallel compression. You've got half wet, half dry. You're mixing some back in to beef up the drums. It can work pretty good in rock and roll. It can work pretty good in funk, generally on acoustic drum kits. It doesn't work so well in dance music because we have totally different drums. They're these huge, powerful, heavily processed samples. You're often better off just using 100% wet compression, but with just less, not going crazy. Because the parallel method, you're smashing the gain reduction and blending a bit back in, sometimes even boosting a little low and high end as well too. This is to try and give acoustic drums that more processed, exciting feel, but we already have that in the samples that we're using in dance music. So there's another one of those dangerous tips where you could make an assumption and be like, oh, that seems like it makes sense. I should go and do that. That's going to fix everything, but it's not what you need. And when you start getting distracted with all these tips that are ineffective for you and your genre, it stops you focusing on the ones that could have helped you. It stops you looking for them or asking questions about them, discovering them. You're missing out on so much. Now, it's not always genre-specific tips that pop up and confuse people. Sometimes it's just tricks without context. Like I said before, people like to celebrate complexity on YouTube, unfortunately, and you'll see some random thing come up about, like I'm saying, like mid-side multi-band something or other, something very specific that I'm not saying I've never used it, but it's such a rare case scenario that I would need to use it. It's not the day-to-day bread and butter that's going to make a big difference. And without that kind of context, you're easily going to get confused and think, I need to put this on everything. And sometimes it's presented that way because maybe the teacher or the person doing the video is saying how excited they are that they've discovered this. They want to share it with you. That's great. But they don't always give you that context. They might assume you know it already. They might be assuming that you're already advanced. And if you're not at that level, it's just going to confuse you. You're not going to know the context of where you should be using this tip. And I'm just mentioning one there, but imagine, and this is very realistic, that there are thousands of tips like this out there that are not shown with context, and they're not shown when to use this and why. Because like we always say, there's many, many little tips you need to know to do with mixdowns. There's obviously an overall bigger picture, but you need to understand where everything fits in the order, when to use what and why, the system of it all. That helps you have that context and understand these tips. And when you do know that system, it's great because then you can actually watch YouTube videos and go, okay, that's interesting. I might try that in that scenario. Or that's interesting. I might try that if I'm mixing one of those genres. So it's kind of helps you understand it more, and it makes YouTube more useful, which is great because there is useful stuff on there, but it's not useful if you don't already know what you're doing. And probably one of the biggest problems, though, that I notice is there's so much of the foundation just missing in YouTube education for mixdowns. You see, you can't skip the basics and expect a pro result. But the thing is, the basics probably not as exciting to talk about. Like I've told you in videos before too, and I'll say it again here right now, the volume balance is one of the most important things. It's not very exciting though. It doesn't even use any plugins. It's just using the volume balance faders in your DAW. Now there is a little bit of trick to it. Of course, you've got to have good reference tracks and meters and things and know what you're aiming for to set your volume balance right. But if you don't have your volume balance right, everything falls apart. So there's a bunch of other foundations as well too, like learning EQ properly, learning compression properly, and not just learning it, but knowing when to use it and why. Every effect in mixing or every tool should only be used on a case-by-case basis. We don't just throw things against the wall and see what sticks. Once you know what you're doing, once you have that system and understanding, you listen to the sound and you decide, does it need something? Very often it might not. It might be fine. And if it does need something, you can hear what it sounds like. You can imagine what you want it to sound like. You choose the appropriate tool. You make a quick adjustment and that's it. It's done. No guessing. There shouldn't be guessing. But this doesn't happen if you've skipped the basics. And like I said, going over the basics sometimes doesn't seem as exciting, but it's what is going to move the needle when they're explained to you properly. But every day there's new plugins being released and people are finding out about new random genre techniques and specific context techniques as well too. So they seem like interesting YouTube titles, and sure, they're going to make videos on them because they're going to get clicks, they're going to get plays, and once you start watching some of them, more of them will get recommended to you, and it's just going to drive you further and further away from mastering the basics. I shouldn't even say basics because they're not basic. They're the foundation. They're the foundation of what makes a great mix. They're not easy. They take practice. It's like in any professional sport or something. Once an athlete gets to a super higher level and they're hiring a world-class coach to train them, they're often going over the foundations, the fundamentals, because that makes up everything. And it's the same in mixdowns, even in music production too. Mastering your fundamentals is the most powerful thing you can do. And you need a good coach for that. A lot of these kind of things that we're talking about, I'm often undoing these bad habits when we get new students coming to us for mentoring, or when we're starting off with Pro Sound Secrets or something like that. So I've seen a bunch of them, and I've seen how they backfire, and I've heard their explanations of why they were doing what they were doing. And don't get me wrong, it's not their fault. It's just, they're shown the wrong thing initially, and that's what I'm here to fix. But I'll have people coming in doing, say, house or even techno, and they're mixing it like it's a dubstep track. They're cutting low end out of their kick drum. They've got it pitched up too high. They've got way too much sub in their bass line and it's pushed down low. They're making things overcomplicated by layering 2 to 3 kick drums to design one. They're splitting their bass into 3 layers, grouping everything and processing things with EQs and then undoing that process with another EQ, overusing OTT and just over-processing stuff in general. And all of this stuff just completely backfires because these tips can potentially work for the right genre, in the right context, in the right moment, but they're mixing them all together. They're pulling all the food out of the fridge and cooking it together, like I was saying. So that's why it's coming out strange. That's why it's backfiring. So I'm sure you can start to see what I'm talking about here. But even if this stuff was working, even if you got lucky and you managed to find, you must have gotten very lucky, and you managed to find some way to learn some useful techniques and piece together some sort of system somehow from everything on YouTube, you might still be finding you're a little stuck in the loop. And let's talk about this. Let's call this chapter 3, why you're still staying in this loop and why you're not growing further and getting to a higher level. People are often plateauing in YouTube University. And yes, I do recognize the irony that I'm telling this to you on YouTube, but it's just an easier way for me to communicate with you. Or maybe you're listening to this. I mean, it is a podcast. You might be listening to this on Spotify or Apple Music or something, in which case, check out the YouTube. But yeah, here's the reason why it's keeping you stuck in the loop of progress, and maybe even in your song too, is that even if you manage to make everything work on YouTube, you're still in a feedback vacuum. As in, you've got no professional ears listening to your tunes and giving you actionable feedback, giving you constructive criticism to help you grow, to help you iterate and get to that next level. Because again, hypothetically, even if you picked the exact perfect tips, you found them all on YouTube, you pieced together the system, how do you know you're even doing it right? Very often what happens is you end up picking up a bunch of mistakes or doing something slightly wrong unintentionally, and you just keep repeating them. And they can compound into other mistakes as well too, and it can grow and snowball. Like I was saying before, when we get students come to us the first time, one of the first things we're often doing is undoing or unteaching this misinformation. So really, the sooner people can come to us in their journey, the more we can help them, or the faster we can help them, because we can skip all that unlearning, that deprogramming. Often people ask and say, should I be more advanced before you come to you? I say, no, come whenever you want. The sooner you come, the better. But yeah, that feedback is essential. Now, we include that as part of our Pro Sound Secrets course as well too, for that very reason. Even though we're laying out the full system of how you should be mixing your electronic music, with all the genre-specific things explained, with all the case scenarios explained, so you know when to use what, you master your fundamentals, we still insist on doing feedback as well too, because we need to check that you're actually getting this. And if you're not, even if you think you are, we can help steer you on track. We can help you out and make sure it's working. I think that's crucial. But another thing that wouldn't be helping you too, even if you found all the right things on YouTube, you're just going to get information overload as well too, because there's just way too much stuff on there. I mean, I think even just the time you would spend sifting through trying to find the right tips would take too long. And even if you do find the right ones, it's really tempting to binge out and just watch loads and loads of videos. And you can get stuck in that loop. Maybe somebody listening can relate to this. When you're watching so much education, you're not really actually putting it into practice. You're kind of binging tips, and this doesn't equal growth. We can kind of sometimes trick our brain into thinking we're doing something proactive and productive there, right? You think, oh yeah, I'm watching all this stuff. This is my study time. I'm getting my stuff done here. But if your mixes aren't getting better, if your songs aren't getting better musically too, and if you're not finishing them faster and more often, then it's not working. It's as simple as that. You should be finishing great songs fast. They should be sounding pro, and all of that should be getting better each time. If that's not happening, then whatever you're doing is not working. And that kind of leads straight into the accountability gap. This kind of overall self-directed learning without structure is really going to keep you stuck. I don't care how organized you are. Even if you were somehow finding some good feedback somewhere, even if you were somehow finding some good videos on YouTube somewhere, it is just hard to stay focused and stay on track. It's so much more helpful if you've got people there giving you accountability, chasing you up, pushing you to do your best and pushing you to achieve your dreams. And not just pushing, but helping, being understanding as well too, listening to what you're trying to achieve and helping you make that happen, not forcing you to sound like everybody else or follow some kind of formula or something, helping you achieve your art the way you want it to be, the way you want it to sound, bringing that to reality. Because I think we all have experienced at some point in time that feeling of hearing our song coming out of the speakers and be like, it doesn't sound like it does in my head. It sounds so much better in my head. And we just want to share that experience of what we hear in our heads with everybody else. And when you've got accountability from some professionals looking after you who understand your vision and what you're going for, it's much more likely you're going to reach that goal. I mean, I've had a bunch of students over the years, and even through Pro Sound Secrets when they'd first arrived too, where they were struggling to even finish songs at first when they came to us. And then they're coming to me for like mixdown advice, but they're not even finishing that many songs because they were just getting so frustrated at the sound of it in the loop stage that they would give up. Everything would sound kind of mushy and have no definition. There was either no low-end weight and power, or there was way too much and it was super muddy. Harsh high frequencies and things like this, and it was definitely not mono compatible. Probably way too many parts in there as well, and it was just busy and overly complex. And so understandably, when they listen to it over and over on loop and repeat, and they're trying to mix it before they've even arranged it as well too, and they just start getting stressed out, overwhelmed, and thinking, oh, maybe this is just not a good song. Maybe I'm just not good enough. This is killing my vibe. I'm just going to stop working on this song. Maybe I'll start another one. Maybe. But once they started working with me and I started helping them out and pointing these things out, showing them the things that they'd never been taught before, showing them the things that they were shown or taught incorrectly, and showing them the right way to do it and the right order to do things, suddenly everything got a lot easier, a lot more fun, a lot more achievable, and they could very quickly arrange and finish the songs and then focus more and enjoy the mixdown process. And then not long after that, they would raise their level, their quality 10 times higher or more. They'd go from struggling on their loops with this mushy kind of sound to having clear, powerful, huge sounding professional mixdowns that are just as good as their favorite producers. Honestly, if not better, really. And now a bunch of them too do mixdown work on the side because people have heard their mixes and they've been like, damn, can I pay you to mix my track? And because they're so confident with their mixing, it's super fun. It's a pleasure. It's like, sure, now I get paid to just, and then they say to me like, Stu, I've got to thank you. I can't believe, I feel like I'm getting away with something here because I'm getting paid to just do this super fun thing. I'm like, yep, exactly. You put the work in, good on you, enjoy. And it's cool because they're making other people happy too. They're making these other people hear their song the way it should be heard as well, so they can be stoked on their music and they really appreciate that. So look, if you've been stuck in that endless loop of random YouTube tips, here's the truth. You don't need more tricks. What you need is a complete start to finish system from someone who's been there in every genre, signed and released to top tier labels, played on loads of huge sound systems, and knows how to effectively communicate and teach their mixdown skills. Plus, you need the feedback to keep you on track. And all of that is exactly what I do inside of Pro Sound Secrets. If you want to know more about that, head over to basskleph.com/PSS. That's basskleph.com/PSS. All right, next week, I'm going to break down exactly what makes a track sound truly professional. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out on that, hit subscribe. And if you like this podcast, hit like or leave a comment or review. It helps me help more producers. So until next week, remember, quantity brings quality. So go finish something today. And if you want it to sound pro, you know where to find me.